please join me in welcoming Dr. Kevin Rand. Woo! Thank you, sir.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
Tonight, I'm going to commit heresy. I'm going to present several orthodoxies that our culture has inculcated into us since the day we are born. And I'm going to use evidence from psychological science to suggest that these orthodoxies are flawed and incomplete. And I'm going to suggest an alternative that some may consider blasphemy. And I call these alternatives the 3 yes buts. Orthodoxy number 1, always look on the bright side of life. Now, we've heard several versions of this. Look for the silver lining. If you think you can, you can. Accentuate the positive. And the idea that thinking positive thoughts can make life better goes back for thousands of years. But the history of the mass marketing of positive thinking can be traced back to 1952 with the publication of Norman Vincent Peale's The Power of Positive Thinking. This book sold over 5 million copies. And he promised that if we just engaged in positive thinking, that we could develop an unshakable self-confidence and to get rid of all the suffering in our lives. And of course, this inspired others to write books like The Power of Positive Thinking in Business. And then psychologists started to get on board and say, well, positive thinking is the pathway to authentic happiness, and that positive thinking, in fact, is the how of happiness. And this became such a popular idea that recently we've had a book and a movie that tells us, look, if you just think positive thoughts and send them out into the universe, then all of your hopes and dreams and desires will come back to you. Well, it is true that positive thinking has benefits. Optimists are more likely to get hired. They're more likely to get promoted. Optimists experience fewer negative emotions during times of stress. People who think hopefully heal faster and experience less pain. However, there is research evidence that says that negative thinking is also beneficial. For example, pessimistic college students study more and get higher grade point averages. CEOs who are pessimistic have more profitable companies and have a 50% less chance of experiencing forced turnover. Pessimists are more likely to wear seatbelts. Pessimists are more likely to exercise. Pessimists are more likely to use condoms. And elderly pessimists are less likely to develop depression, they are less likely to develop a physical disability, and yes, they are less likely to die. That's right, pessimists outlive optimists. This is a 12-year-long study looking at 10,000 people, and the results are clear. The top black line is the survival curve of pessimists. The lower line that's dashed is the survival curve of optimists. And as you can see, at every stage, there are more pessimists alive than there are optimists. So it's true, there are certainly benefits to thinking positive thoughts. But, and it's a big but, I cannot lie, anticipating the worst is often the best way to prevent it. Orthodoxy number 2, always do your best. Again, we've heard several versions of this. My grandfather used to say, in any job, big or small, do your best or don't do it at all. Athletes and coaches tell us to give 110% at all times. And if you've ever hired a personal trainer at a gym like Michelle here, you know that they like to manifest this belief by taking you through a series of exercises that exhaust each and every muscle group, telling you to give your all, give your all, give your all. Well, it's true. Trying your hardest and using your willpower are sometimes necessary to achieve success. However, there's a vast body of research that shows that it is not adaptive to always try your best. There are 2 main reasons that you should not always try your best. First, the always do your best thinking fosters what's known as all or none thinking, which research has shown is the core cognitive distortion among people who experience clinical depression. This all or none thinking fosters strong negative emotions and gives rise to hesitancy and lethargy, which is why this is so detrimental to our productivity. Because if you engage in all or none thinking, then if you don't feel 100% motivated or you don't feel 100% dedicated to a task, then it suggests that you might as well just skip it. And that's not good. Usually doing a little bit of something is better than not doing it at all. The second main reason that you shouldn't believe that you should always do your best has to do with what science has told us about the myth of free will. Now, I call it the myth of free will because science has given us good and bad news when it comes to willpower. The good news is we do have willpower, that we can override that urge to be lazy and to take the shortcut. But the bad news is it is certainly not free. That is to say, each and every time you use your willpower, you have less willpower to use. It is a finite and exhaustible resource. So use it wisely. That's why people who refrain from doing their best, except for when they're working on things they consider very important, achieve a higher proportion of their high priority goals. In the seminal study on this idea, Baumeister and colleagues did an experiment, and they randomly assigned people to a red group or a blue group. Now, in the blue group, people were shown a plate of warm, delicious cookies and told that they could look at it, they could smell at it, but they had to resist the temptation to eat those cookies. Whereas in the red group, the people are invited to eat as many cookies as they wanted. After this, the experimenters had both groups engage in a problem-solving task, and this is what they found. The folks in the blue group, while attempting that problem-solving task, were not able to persist as long or make as many attempts at solving that problem because they had depleted themselves by trying to resist those cookies. The people in the cookie condition fared much better. The take-home point is it's not adaptive to always do your best, that you should spend your willpower wisely. Yes, sometimes you should try your best, but, see what I did there? But sometimes half-ass is better than no ass at all. Orthodoxy number 3, never give up. Now, there's been lots of people throughout history who have told us this lesson. People like Winston Churchill or Coach Valvano as he was battling cancer. And again, there's an element of truth to this, that persistence is required for success, that you have to keep going after your goals if you want to achieve them. But there's a growing body of literature that shows us that sometimes giving up and letting go is the smarter, healthier choice. As we get older, we can't always get what we want, and we have to learn to let go of our goals. So it's not surprising that research studies have shown that older people who let go of old goals, who let go of past activities, experience greater happiness and greater life satisfaction. In our own research here on patients with advanced cancer, we have found that patients who let go of the goal of cure and focus on feeling good now experience less depression than people who continue pursuing cure to the bitter end. And in a recent study of patients with advanced lung cancer, scientists uncovered one of the most disconcerting ironies of modern medicine. They followed patients with lung cancer, and they looked at the people who chose to give up cure and life prolongation and go into palliative care, and those who aggressively fought the disease, trying to live as long as possible or maybe even get a cure. And this is what they found. The red line on top is the survival line of the people who gave up on the idea of cure. The blue line on the bottom is the survival line of the people who pursued cure to the bitter end. So here, these data suggest that sometimes it's healthier to let go and give up. And that paradoxically, at least in lung cancer, the best way to live longer is to stop trying to live longer. So yes, persistence is important, but knowing when to say when is really just using your head. Now, I've challenged a lot of our core beliefs in our society, and I've said things that are provocative and perhaps distressing. And I don't mean to imply that these ideas are inherently wrong. I think we get into trouble when we try to tell people to always do something or to never do something. It's like telling a novice driver, if you ever get lost, always turn left. You wouldn't do that. It's absurd. So why do we try to give advice by telling people to always do this and never do this? That is not sage advice. Right? What I'd like to suggest instead is that we replace these ideas, that we stop using such absolutist language, and that we give to people something new, something different. And I hope that as I show this to you, what I believe is a better, more accurate orthodoxy, that you will appreciate its inherent irony. I think what we should tell people is to never believe or trust an absolute. If you tell someone to always always do something or to never do something, you inevitably will be wrong.